Our first speaker has been a supporter of the Arboretum for a long, long time, has been on our board, has been a garden writer for decades, at least since she was 16 years old, so it could probably be at least a couple of decades. Has won awards for her writing, has given me one direction, which is to keep it short because she's got a lot to talk about. But I'll say there's no better way to become a better gardener than to visit gardens. And that's what Pam Beck is going to do. She's going to take us all through gardens across the state. And I will say this about all of our speakers here. You know, they're saying never trust a skinny chef, never trust a garden writer or a garden speaker who doesn't have a phenomenal garden of their own. And all of our speakers now fall into that category of fantastic, fantastic gardens. So I tried to stick to the script and keep it brief.
Good job.
So Pam, come on up. Thank you so much for being here to talk about Nothing Could Be Finer.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning. I'm assuming this is on. Good. Okay, you got everything going. All I can say is I've only got 30 minutes. 30 minutes to show you some of the great gardens of North Carolina. I could have spent 30 minutes on just Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. I mean, honestly, those of you who've been out and about. So everything that I'm going to mention to you today, all the gardens, all their websites, all the quotes are in your handout. And for those of you at home, I believe that there's a handout available as well. And so I hope that we can do this very quickly. I suggest, since we've got a rather large state to go around, that you put on your seatbelts because this is going to be a very wild, fast ride. Excuse me. North Carolina. The state is about 500 miles from the Outer Banks to this southwest corner. That is a lot of territory to try to cover. And this is a very much a gardening state. North Carolina has a rich history of being a place that as the colonists came from Europe, they looked around and they said, wow, you know, you can grow just about anything here. Well, this is true. And because of this, we have that wonderful diversity. We've got lots of different types of topography. We can garden here. We are really fortunate that in North Carolina, we can grow just about anything given the right circumstances, and that's where Doug and Greg are gonna come in on this. But I want to show you what is out there that you can go and visit and get inspiration from. And I'm going to start at the coast. And starting at the coast, I think it's appropriate that we start with the Elizabethan Gardens. These are at the Outer Banks, and these were formed in 1951 when the Garden Club of North Carolina decided they wanted to honor those European settlers who came in by building a wonderful garden that would showcase that style of gardening that was in vogue when they left Europe. And so it gives you a little bit of an understanding of what they're going through. One of the highlights of this garden to me is not only the beautiful sculpture that's there, but also there is a tree that was a large oak tree that was there in 1585 when the settlers came in, that this tree is still standing. And it's worth going to see that if nothing else. But if you're going up that way, go see the Lost Colony play while you're in the area too. As you come down through North Carolina, all these little towns, I want you to take the opportunity to walk around and peek into the gardens. And this happens to be a garden of a good friend of ours named Sunny Newton. And this is in Beaufort, North Carolina. She has crushed oyster shell paths. She has wonderful plants. And if she's out there in her garden, and she is now in her 90s, she will take time to tell you what she's growing and show you what she has. And she's just one of the most giving people. And I've found this about most North Carolinians. If you come up and you compliment their garden, what are they going to do? They're going to invite you in. And they're going to probably share a plant too. Going down the coast, down around Wilmington, Airlie Gardens is another one that you really should see. This is started about the early 1900s. A man and wife had had a large estate, they decided that they wanted to collect azaleas. And this garden has the Azalea Festival time is the ideal time to see this, but this garden, any time of year you could go, and another 500-year-old oak is in this garden as well. If you're in the Wilmington area, please go see the New Hanover County Cooperative Extension Garden, and it's the Arboretum that's there. And this garden is managed and designed and cared for in large part by master gardeners. And I know that there are some master gardeners in this audience today. And I applaud you spending your time on your knees learning how to garden, really putting it to good use there. And this is one of my favorite gardens is the Ability Garden. If you know anybody who's aging or has limitations, this is a great garden to visit. Not only do they show you how to garden in a situation like this, but they also teach you a little bit about the tools and all there too. Open 7 days a week and 8 to 5 every day. The extension agent said, be sure to tell y'all, come on down. Let's do it. Now, in North Carolina, there are some large cities that are along the coast, but most of them, as we call down east, that area between the beaches and the Piedmont, these are full of little small towns. And those small towns oftentimes are treasure troves of where you can find great gardens. So please don't just say, well, this is a little town, I don't know anything about it, and miss some of the opportunities. This little town happened to be where the first official palace for North Carolina, isn't that a funny word? Palace for North Carolina was built. This was the governor's mansion, and this was done in the Georgian style, which was appropriate from Europe at that time, and it was quite in vogue. And the great thing about the Tryon Palace is that it is beautiful any time of year, and I encourage you to go in wintertime to see gardens, because if a garden is good, it's got good bones and good design, that will still show up. And I was very fortunate that I was giving a lecture and happened to be the only person to walk this garden early in the morning, right after a snowfall. And that really speaks volumes to me as far as the way to enjoy a garden. Another good garden in the winter is this one in Greenville, North Carolina. This again is at the Cooperative Extension Office. They've got a children's garden area. They've got a great beekeeping demonstration area there too, but a good one to visit. And again, a small town, if you happen to be in that area, going to an ECU game or something like that, go in and check that one out. This is to remind me to tell you to go to church to see the gardens, especially these old historic churches. This wonderful Episcopal church in Tarboro, the gentleman who was the priest there had friends who were missionaries all over the world. And so he asked his friends to bring in or send him seeds, which they did. And there are trees there that are growing that are nowhere else in North Carolina. J.C. Ralston used to take a lot of his students out there to go and see the grounds of this little church. And what's so wonderful about this church is it's enjoyable any time of year. They have a garden symposium in the chapel, and then we have luncheon out in the cemetery. And it's not creepy at all. This is somewhere where you can sit and enjoy and just look around, and it's a very peaceful place to be. The symposium that they hold is to provide money for this place. This is the Blunt Bredger's house, and this was an early plantation that was in Tarboro up on a high place. Now, for those of you who don't understand why Tarboro is so important, is at the entrance of the Pamlico Sound is where the Tar River comes in, and it comes in through Tarboro, and it was navigable by water all the way here. And so many goods came and left from this little town, and that's where the wealth was that was in this place at one time. The Tar River, by the way, goes all the way up to Lewisburg, for those of you who are from this area. Now, we're going to jump over to Wendell. And Wendell is a wonderful place to visit because of one of the supporters of the J.C. Ralston Arboretum and a great plantsman. This is owned by Pat McCracken. And Pat is one of these people, if you have sunshine ligustrum in your garden, or if you have Stella Ruby magnolia in your garden, garden, it's thanks to Pat. Pat is a person who likes to introduce plants, and he has a great garden center. It's only open by appointment, but I'm going to tell you a few of the places that you really should see. If you don't know them yet, you need to know them. And this is another place too. The garden that's down in Fayetteville is at the confluence of the Cape Fear River, which comes in from Wilmington, and where Cross Creek meets. Now, how many of you read Outlander? You know all about Cross Creek, right? Well, this is supposedly where Jamie's aunt lived, was in this area. So I like to walk around and imagine that. But the great thing about the Cape Fear Botanical Garden is their native plant collection down there, especially for those of you who might have a place to the coast or are dealing with sandy soils. They have just an extraordinary garden to enjoy, and I really urge you to go. The middle of summer, it can get a little steamy, mosquitoes, but any other time. And they do have a fabulous camellia show down there too with lectures, so I would encourage you to go there. This is the Sandhills Horticultural Gardens that are in Pinehurst. Now, for those of you who don't know Pinehurst, if you're a golfer, you all know about the Open, the Masters, and that wonderful Pinehurst golf course and all that. But for those of you who want to maybe do something else, this is where you go. This is another great garden associated with Extension, also with the university down there. And the display gardens are fantastic. There is a holly collection that is second to none. If you are really getting into hollies, this is where you should go. And again, an open garden, any time of year it's good, especially in wintertime like that. All right, now how many of you have been to Big Bloomers? All right, there's the fans. Now this is not a shop, for those of you who don't know, this is not a shop for large ladies' underwear. This is referring to flowers, not anything else. This place is phenomenal. You know, oftentimes you'll go in and you're going to bump into landscape designers. You're going to bump into all kinds of plant people, and you'll make all kinds of friends in between the greenhouses. There are multiple greenhouses. One is just herbs, one are sun-loving perennials, one's shade-loving perennials. There's house plants, there's annuals. Now they're doing trees and shrubs. All I can say is get a big truck and your best friend who can lift and go. The great thing too is oftentimes because they sell small items that they propagate there, the cost is not quite as prohibitive as it could be in some of the bigger garden centers. But do check out Big Bloomers. It's a lot of fun to go and do. Another great pollinator garden in Pittsburgh to go and see for those of you who want to learn more about butterflies and insects and the things that you can draw into your garden. Debbie Roos is the cooperative extension agent who's in charge of this. She gives lots of lectures. They do garden tours. It's right in the middle of a parking lot, believe it or not, and the diversity of what she can grow in there is astonishing. So please do go visit this. And Pittsburgh is such a cool little town anyway. I hope that you all have discovered it. It's a hidden jewel. This is the darling of horticulture right now. This is Bree Gluvna, and I knew her before she got married, and she's an Arthur now. Can you believe it? But Bree's garden, if you get a chance to go see it, do. She has certain open garden days. She allows groups to come in. Of course, you have to pre-book that with her. But this girl's the real deal. She is enthusiastic, she's knowledgeable, and her garden is exuberant, is the only way I know to describe it. And as much personality and bubbling and happiness as Bree has, her garden really does that too. And she will teach you things and you don't even know you're being taught. She just is that much fun. Now here is horticulture's answer to Elvis Presley, you know. Tony Avent with Plant Delights. For those of you who don't know Tony, he is known around the world by just Tony. You know, he is truly, it's like Elvis. You can go anywhere, and if they find out in a big garden or a garden center that you're from North Carolina, they'll say, oh, do you know Tony? That's it. You know, Tony Avent, Plant Delights Nursery, Juniper Level Botanical Garden. Tony is the real deal. He is a plant explorer. He's a plant breeder. He introduces plants. He knows plants. He's a walking encyclopedia. He is frightening. He is so smart. And he doesn't forget anything. But if you get a chance to go when he has one of his open garden days, take advantage of it and go. The open garden days are usually free. The caveat is that he's selling plants, so they're not really free. You know, you're gonna spend some money, but it's worth it. Look at that. This is on his back patio. And if you think you cannot grow succulents in our area, he's going to prove that, oh, yes, you can. Now we're in the Piedmont. North Carolina goes from the sandy soil where the old ocean bed used to be, and there is a falls line. If you wonder why so many things are called falls along this area, that's because that's where the soil changed. In Wake Forest, on one street, you will have sandy soil. The next street, you're going to have clay and rock. It's because that's where that old line was, and that's where the Piedmont starts. So once we get to the capital here, we are in the Piedmont. And I want to start with the Piedmont with probably the most prestigious house that's in Raleigh, and that's the Governor's Mansion. It is a lovely garden. You can visit it, especially if you go with a group. You have to book your time to go, but it is well worth it. What's so great about the Governor's Mansion is we've got the history of the place, and look how it used to look with no fence and trees, just newly planted all around that property of that Victorian home. And what I wanted to point out too is, do you see all the shrubs lining a Victorian home? That's so old school. That's what it used to be. Don't do that anymore, okay? All right. Instead, you know, broaden your horizons. Go and see what they're doing now. And one of the things I love about this is that every governor who has been in residence there has left a mark of one way or the other on that garden. And I loved it when Governor Perdue was there, that she took some of the property that was right outside the border there, around the fence. And because they're growing a lot of food in the garden, she wanted to do something more for the community, and she became part of the Plant a Row for the Hungry. And for any of you who are interested in Plant a Row for the Hungry, I'll be happy to talk to you about that afterwards when we take questions. So I do want to go ahead and go quickly through this, but I love that she did that during the time. I had to show you the Mordecai House garden. For those of you who are into history, this is one of the old style plantation type homes that were here. It started in the 1700s with Moses Mordecai, and this garden is where I cut my teeth on gardening and got the bug, and I haven't looked back. So volunteering here is what started a lifetime of discovery for me. And this place, the J.C. Ralston Arboretum. I know Mark told you all about the work that's being done here, and it is a research facility and all that kind of thing. But this is a beautiful garden because it is gorgeous to look at. Everything's labeled. You can learn so much, and the programming that you have here, there's just nothing like it in Raleigh. We've had great, yeah, there's one of our heroes. We've had great directors here too. And for a short time, Bryce Lane, who many of you know from television, this Emmy Award winning guy, he gives classes here. So if you want to learn more, you know, you get to meet this famous TV celebrity and enjoy him. And then there's this gentleman. If you don't know him, he's very modest. He was also a director here. That's Dr. Denny Werner. And Dennis Werner is, he's another one like Tony who's known so much around the world. In fact, you probably have seen some of his research. He does a lot of work with woody plants, because if you've been drawn to Flamethrower, that beautiful redbud, or Ruby Falls, or some of the other new ones that you're seeing, then that's Denny Werner's work. Many of the little buddleias that you're working with in your gardens are from Denny Werner. So this gentleman, he is making an impact still in the world of horticulture, and it all's happening right here in North Carolina. Farmers Market, great place to not only talk to the farmers and learn some tips from them, but also to buy plants. I encourage you to do that, and go to the fair. The fairgrounds every year have competition gardens, but they have a great flower show area too. And if you're growing the prettiest dahlia in your neighborhood and you want to win a little money and a ribbon and some bragging rights, this is the place to go to too. Up closer to where I live in Wake Forest is a little area called Creedmoor, and Cedar Creek Gardens is outside of the shop there where the gallery is. There are not only beautiful gardens, but John Martin and Jeff Bottoms have plants for sale there too, so that's another good place to go for those. Duke, oh my goodness, university gardens, but with endowments, so that this is the display garden of display gardens to see in the Southeast. It truly is. They've got lots of themes, lots of money, and lots of creativity. I think it's the closest thing we have possibly to a Chanticleer or a Longwood is to go and walk around those Duke gardens. They are really, really phenomenal. At the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, in the heart of campus is 5 acres that Dr. Coker, who was the first botany professor, looked at the swampland where they were grazing cows and said, we can do better than that. And he turned it into a botanical garden that's a living classroom for his students so that they could learn more about the native plants of North Carolina. And he would oftentimes plant the Asian counterpart across the walkway from the Asian one, from the American one, and that way they learned plant ID, all in this little garden that used to be a swamp. At the North Carolina Botanical Garden in Chapel Hill, for those of you who are into native plants, this is the place to go. It is only native plants. They've got it divided into different areas so that you can learn about coastal, Piedmont, or mountain plants. Everything's labeled. They have wonderful classes, and they also have great sculpture show. I don't know if you've had the fun part of going there, but any time of the year you're going to see something that's interesting, whether it's the form of foliage or whether it's the berries or the flowers. You're going to see something that you're going to want to know, and they will teach you all about it. Going up into Hillsborough, this is a garden that's going to soon be in the Garden Conservancy. This is Nancy Goodwin's garden. And any time of year, it is one to visit. Again, you have to do it by appointment with a group of a certain size, and there is a fee involved in this one, but it's well worth it any time of year. You saw it in winter, and this is what it looks like in summertime. So constantly changing, and a very influential garden, and a treat to see. Going down to the zoo in Asheboro, what a place, what a horticultural mecca that is too. You can wander around and take a look at all the exciting plantings that they've got for these different habitats, for these different areas, and there are very knowledgeable horticulturalists on staff who would be happy to answer your questions there. Bouncing over back up a little bit to Kernersville, we're getting more into the middle of the state. This is the Senior Botanical Garden, and this is a great display garden. It's small, it's intimate, but it's very well designed. Chip Calloway, by the way, who is a landscape architect, had the design in this very lovely area with the bulbs. This is what it looks like summer. But those, by the way, are ginkgo trees that have been turned into a living wall. And you can look through them by the way that they're pleached and they're trained and they're pruned. And this is great to see and learn from too. This is the darling, the child of this woman right here. This is Adrienne Rothling. She and her husband, John, are both directors of botanical gardens. That is one of the most unusual things to see in the horticultural industry. And here they are in North Carolina. Adrienne has been at the Senior Garden almost since its inception. John, when I took this picture, was working with the High Point University Gardens. Now, you don't usually think of college gardens as being a place to go visit, but you can visit these. And this is the reason you should. This is an amazing landscape, and it's very well kept. It's beautifully designed, and you cannot get into this school, by the way, without an appointment. They've got gates and everything around it, but if you get something going, check that Garden Tours site and go and see what they have done there. John was at High Point. Now he is at Renolda Gardens, and he's making a real difference in these gardens too. The Renolda Gardens are the ones associated with Wake Forest Forest University and J.R. Reynolds. This is one of those beautiful gardens that was outside their private home. It's got a conservatory in it. It's got lots to see, and a good one to stop and stretch your legs on. For those of you who are really into history and want to learn a little bit more about old style gardens, I would tell you to go to Bethabara and also to Old Salem. This is in Winston-Salem. These were both Moravian communities, and Bethabara is actually older than the Old Salem is. And it's a lovely way to see how gardening was done. They have reenactors with old implements and tools, and they'll tell you what they're planting and how they're doing it. And if you find modern ways frustrating and you want to try something, you know, that's a throwback, this is a great way to learn. As we go down towards Charlotte, there's some great gardens to see down there as well in the Queen City. These two are within a block or so of each other. This is the Winghaven Garden, which is a pleasure garden. It's built so that you can walk through and see birds, hear birds. For those of you who are gardening for your birds, this is definitely one to see. And just enjoy it. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and down the way from it is the Elizabeth Lawrence Garden. Now, for those of you who like to read about gardening, I can recommend Elizabeth Lawrence as one of the best writers that we have had in North Carolina. Elizabeth was the first woman to graduate from landscape architecture from NC State University. Yay! And she was a garden writer in the Raleigh area and then moved to Charlotte and was a garden writer there many, many years. Miss Lawrence knew everybody. She communicated with everybody. Her books are as lovely and relevant today as they were when they were written. And that garden of hers, they've tried to preserve it with a lot of the original plantings, and you can go and stroll that and enjoy that as well. A garden that is newer that you really should see is one that belongs to Tom and his wife Lib, and this is Maple Walk. Maple Walk is about 2.5 acres, and Tom and Lib, hi, I know you're watching. They told me they would be, and they wanted you all to know that last year they had 3,000 visitors. This is in a neighborhood in a home garden. They're extraordinary gardeners. They have a Japanese maple collection that's second to none, and Tom knows how to prune maples. So if you ever want to know secrets, you know, go and talk to Tom and Lib. They're wonderful people. They're very welcoming, and they would love to have you visit their garden too. This is the Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden that's just below Charlotte, and definitely one to go see. It's a very big display garden. Even in the wintertime, you can see the excitement of the color and the diverse plantings that they have there. We have to jump to the mountains because I've only got 10 minutes to tell you about the mountains. This is breaking my heart. But the mountains of North Carolina, we have on Mount Mitchell is like 6,600 feet high above sea level. This is the highest point west of the Mississippi. And there are hundreds of mountains that are at least 6,000 feet. You know, it's just amazing to me when you get out there and you start walking around and realize that you're always on a hill in the mountains. How do they garden? Well, very well, because it is a temperate rainforest. Because of those clouds, it's always moist and lush and cool, and so many things can grow there that you should see. Now, this little house is a typical house in North Carolina. Yeah. No, it's not. And you usually think of the Biltmore because you want to go inside and see all the pretties and how the other half of 1% lived. But, you know, really my heart and soul when I go there is this. Go see the gardens. Take time. Make sure that, yes, you see the house proper, but do wander the gardens. There's some great trails that are all through. The display gardens are lovely any time of year, and make your way down to the conservatory so that you definitely see those tropicals, because this is how your houseplants are supposed to look. You know? If you had a conservatory and a staff, they would look like that. Yeah, okay. Don't feel bad about it. The North Carolina Arboretum, which is oftentimes confused with all the ones that are at this end of the state. This is one that's in Asheville. It's just up the way from the Mountain Research Center in Fletcher. This is a lovely garden that not only has acres and acres of walking trails and native plants and great display gardens, but it's just such a beautiful place to be, just such a restful place. Now, there is a charge for the car when you go in. You know, you're in there free, but there's a charge for the car just to get you in and help preserve this and keep it going. And it makes me happy to think that my tax dollars may be going to help keep that going. All right, for those of you who are into Japanese maples, you probably have heard of MrMaple.com or the Maple Boys, and if you've ever had the pleasure of hearing Tim and Matt talk, they are delightful. This is their mama's house, and you can bet that she has the best maples out in her garden. Look at this front garden. This is almost as bad as my house, you know, as far as Japanese maples, but they are down in Hendersonville. This is where the apples come from, and it's near East Flat Rock, if you've ever been down there. And it's in the mountains, and it's a lovely place. And if you arrange to go during one of their open days when they have sales and everything, be prepared for the crowds. Otherwise, you can get a group together and contact them and maybe visit them. And also, they've got an outpost that's a beautiful garden to visit, too. Can you believe this is a city planting? This is government at its finest. This is Blowing Rock, North Carolina. This is what it looks like in the fall. Because of those cool nights, the temperatures drop. Those colors are real. This has not been altered. This is not Photoshop. This is the real deal. I don't know who on the government staff works on that, but it is spectacular. It'll take your breath away. And go see these little towns, because that's where the treasures are. That's where the gardens that are going to thrill you will be. A garden that definitely has thrilled everybody, including Southern Living, Architectural Digest, and all the other big magazines right now, is Jay Sifford's garden. This is up in West Jefferson. This is that high north-west corner up there near Virginia and Tennessee. Way high in the mountains, but boy, what a landscape he has created there. He is a landscape designer. He does work out of the Charlotte area, and this is his retreat house. Can you believe that? When you love that with all that beautiful color, and he's a master at it too. I did want to finish up with the fact that we think oftentimes of this as being 3 different areas or 3 different sections, but the beauty of this is, you know, in the gardening community, we're really all connected. The beautiful thing about that is the Rothlings, for instance, the couple I showed you earlier, they both have North Carolina State University connections, J.C. Ralston connections. They both worked at Tony Avent's. That's where they met, and that's how they met. I was just remarking to Doug about 4 of these gardens, at least, that I've shown you today. Our next speaker had a hand in. The connections are there. The sharing is there. This is a great state to be in. Welcome if you're new. Welcome if you're new to gardening. But go out and see these great gardens and get inspired, okay? And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Doug. Was Mark going to introduce Doug? Yeah, you are? Okay, I'll turn off my mic so you can go onto yours. But thank you very much. Thanks.